Mike Gerald and Judy Brower and Foy Bellier down in Florida is just their natural propensity to want to hang out and want to build friendships with people that could be far away from Jesus, or maybe they don't know Jesus or want to know Jesus, but these people in CREO want to build amazing relationships with people in the everyday spaces of life. And a huge part of those everyday spaces is parties and things we do for fun, for enjoyment. And hopefully we can discuss this hour that's one of Jesus's values as well. His ethos, how he lives his life, is to enjoy parties and having fun. And I love the topic. So I don't know if Mike, you want a little more introduction than that, or is that good for now? Or?
No, I mean, I think that's a great intro. I think it's sort of a fun place to begin the conversation around our values, because I think that there's this idea out there that Christians and fun are usually not put next to each other. I mean, if you're playing apples to apples, like, you don't put Christians and fun next to each other. And I think that's a problem. I think we need to sort of recapture that followers of, I mean, let's put it this way. Jesus was fun.
Mm-hmm.
Jesus was a lot of fun. There's no way that you draw the types of people that Jesus did and show up in the sort of environments that Jesus did, and that people felt so safe, and he had these gatherings of people around him, unless you're fun. I mean, he wasn't a killjoy.
Yeah.
And I think to be followers of Jesus, we really do want a culture of fun. And I know that so many people even act like Jeff, that it feels wrong to talk about Christianity and fun. Like, this is serious business here.
Yeah.
And if you see any images of Jesus, he usually looks like either incredibly pensive or like ready to go do something very serious.
Yeah.
But the lighthearted sort of joy of the whole thing is lost.
Yeah. I love this topic because number one, it really pisses off religious people. And so there's always an element of, do you really, like, when you go to a church and you see those pictures of Jesus and he's really serious looking and he's got always the stoic, kind of like he's more Norwegian than he is Middle Eastern. He's always got the stoic, look on his face, the kind of almost like a scowl or an indifferent look on his face. But then there's these people that share this, I love this photo of Jesus because he's holding a child and he's smiling, or he's laughing, or I love this artist rendering of Jesus when he's he's got a smile on his face and he's washing the disciples' feet. I just think we, in our mind's eye, we equate Jesus with seriousness. And I just like you said, I think there's a different picture that the New Testament paints.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, man. I think that I think that God has a great sense of humor. One of our favorite things to do, I think, in CREO is to laugh together. I mean, every time I'm with a group of you, we're having a great time. We're telling stories and we're laughing, and this goes on into the evening. And in fact, I would say any sort of event or gathering that we've had that's in person, you haven't fully experienced it unless you go out at night with us. Because there's something about us hanging out into the wee hours of the morning,
especially
like laughing and teasing each other. And it's
hey Mike, especially when you're with Foy Bellier, you haven't experienced CREO yet if you haven't hung out late at night with Foy. I'm just gonna say that right away.
Oh man, it's fun to be together. And I think that if we have gatherings, and whatever sort of culture that we're creating in our local expression of church or churches or movement, and I think one of the key core values that we want is we want people to have fun. We want people to come together and really enjoy themselves and
Mhm.
enjoy community and feel like this group of people, whoever we're hanging with, this is the safest environment that I could possibly be in.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
I can actually let my guard down and relax and have
Mhm.
fun and not feel like there's going to be some sort of attack or judgment, or later on they're going to,
Yeah.
sort of pick me apart and nail me to the wall. But I actually feel free to be
Mhm.
with these people. And we've talked about culture of confession being a part of that. But man,
Mhm.
when you feel like you can just be with a group of people and
Yep.
you don't have to put on a show, and you can laugh
Yes.
at yourself and at the world,
Mhm. Yes.
because we
Absolutely.
believe in grace, like we're free to do that, right?
Yeah, absolutely. You said it, Mike. The phrase I love, and I don't know if people are jotting things down or maybe just mentally jotting things down, but I love the phrase, people typically don't move spiritually unless they're connected socially. So people don't typically go there spiritually, like you said about confession and all those deeper things that we love to do together, until they have some kind of a social, if you're a poker player, you have social chips on the table. You have some social investment in someone or some kind of social connection with someone before they end up taking those steps spiritually. So I love that. I love that ethos of CREO. We're not going to help people move spiritually until we can connect with them socially.
Yeah, and you got to think, when's the last time you heard someone in a spiritual setting ask you if you're having fun?
Yeah.
Are you having fun?
Hmm.
Like, do you actually enjoy what you're doing, and the place that you're at and the people that you're with? Those sorts of questions are not even considered spiritual questions.
Right. Right.
It,
Yeah.
it's almost like it's a badge of honor that you're miserable for Jesus.
Yeah. 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 It's so true.
I'm entirely miserable. It's awful.
I
And
took
I
I
I
took
will
my
get great rewards one day for this.
exactly. Let's be miserable together. No, speaking of that, like I said, I got back from Arizona. I just wanted to share a quick story how this was tied together for me and my 13-year-old son Justice. We're getting into metal detecting together with my son. Metal detecting is, you can YouTube guys, and there's guys that really go all out and buy tons of expensive equipment. But we just got him a simple $200, I don't know what it was, metal detector that can tell different metals and things. So we're down in the Arizona desert, and we call this guy, this friend of mine. His name is Mitch. Before we get there, my dad, he has a couple friends. He's like, "You got to talk to Mitch because Mitch metal detects out in the Arizona desert." So I don't know Mitch from Adam. I don't know who he is. I don't know what he's like. But I'm like, he knows more than I do. So I called Mitch. Mitch is like, "Great, I'll take you out on Thursday. The day you get here, let's go out." So we flew in, and 8 hours later, we're out in the Arizona desert with this stranger. We have no idea where he's going to take us, where he's going to lead us. But he brought us out to his bar restaurant out in the middle of the Arizona desert outside of Lake Havasu. There's this great bar location on the mountainside, and the whole mountain is his to kind of explore. It's his playground. So we're metal detecting. My son came across a 50 caliber shell from 1943, and it was actually munitioned in a plant in the Twin Cities, Minnesota, where we're from, because we Googled the markings on it. But he found a real 50 caliber shell from World War II era test planes, and so it was a blast. We spent the whole day together. We had fun together. We were social, meeting friends, getting to know Mitch's story. He got to know our story. We're walking around in the desert for like 4 or 5 hours. The next day, hey, what are you guys doing tomorrow? Come out to the bar because we open from 12 to 5 because it's hot in Arizona. They only do like 5 hours at a time for their power generator out there. There was a band, there's a bar, there's fun people, tons of people, dune buggies and ATVs everywhere, cruising across the mountains. It was a blast, and we were able to have this amazing conversation with Mitch and his friends afterwards at the bar as we drank a cold beer together, just talking about his story and how he believes God has called him into the desert and we shared the gospel together just over a beer, over a natural relationship conversation. Because we were social together first. We built a friendship first. And he's like, when are you guys gonna come back? Because I got some buddies that hang out here at the bar on Saturdays, and they love to meet you, and we can have these kinds of talks about the kingdom, about Jesus, about his love for people and how he loves parties and having fun. And it was just my 13-year-old son was there. And I wanted him to see how easy it is to connect with people and connect the gospel into people's stories. And we all had a blast together. So it was great. Just a fun picture of fun and what that looks like.
I love that, man. I think it's actually criminal and just messed up if your only view of faith or church is confined to a building and sitting in a circle and talking, and that's it. I mean, that doesn't look like what Jesus did with the disciples, right? I mean, if they're traveling together, they're laughing, they're skipping rocks, they're fishing, they're encountering all sorts of really interesting people, going to all types of different places, having all kinds of different meals together. And yet if we sort of have this image of the movement of Jesus being confined to a certain location that's very stale, predictable, you know exactly what's going to happen.
Yeah.
There's no sense of like adventure or wonder or curiosity connected to that, right?
Yeah.
Yet
Yeah.
how often do you find, I mean, I was just talking with one of our microchurch leaders who's telling me the conversations that are happening with the guys that he's connecting with over poker nights. He's going, man, like we've seen the Holy Spirit move more in these poker nights as we hang out and then hang out after we're playing together. And the conversations go in so many different directions. And we just see the hand of God all over it. I mean, it's unbelievable how God works in those environments.
Yeah, it really is. You said it best, Mike, is if we limit our church experiences to those, living room conversations. And even in the micro church world, let's put ourselves in the spotlight. When we share, hey, we had a great micro church gathering, and it's those pictures of us in our living rooms all the time. It's like we gotta kind of put ourselves on the spotlight as well, because that's we can be as easily deterred off the mission of Jesus when we think we have these magical living room gatherings and those kinds of things. I'm just thinking about the three spaces, and you guys might have different spaces that you use, because we don't have an Arizona desert in Minnesota. We have tundra, frozen landscapes. But what we use in Minnesota are three primary areas that anyone really has to their disposal, and you can invite friends into these spaces. And so I just wrote down three of them: my block, my neighborhood, my block. So when you're walking your dog or even in Minnesota, like I go running with my dog, and it's like 2 below, 5 below, whatever, wind chill 30 below. But we have our neighborhoods, with the places we live, and people are there and they're doing something. What are the people doing in your neighborhood? Find that out and do that with them. And then your yard, your space around your home. You have a front yard, a backyard, even a side patio. I remember I think it was like last winter, when COVID, like the first fall at COVID really became a thing. We had the idea of doing a drive-in. So we put a sign on our driveway to do a drive-in, and we had our big screen projector out, and we had neighbors coming by, and they stayed socially distanced, and we would serve them some hot cocoa and popcorn if they wanted. A lot of them didn't, take it, because that was when COVID was first really going crazy here. But yeah, so having a space in your yard or a bonfire maybe in your backyard, and just letting people know somehow, hey, join me in the backyard, or even having the fire pit in your front yard with the cooler open, saying, hey, grab a cold drink and come sit by the fire. And then the third space is our dinner table. And that's what we're going to talk about a lot today. Is I think we've really underestimated the value of our dinner tables, the lunches that we have in our schedules, the dinners that we have in our schedules, even breakfast time. I think we've really undersold the value of the dinner table and how easy it is to connect with people around our dinner table. So So if you're writing things down, taking mental notes, I have our neighborhoods, finding what people are doing for fun in your neighborhood and doing that with them, your yard, inviting people into your yard or your driveway or your bonfire, and then your dinner table. Those are three simple areas anyone can have parties and invite relationship and connection.
Yeah, I love that, man. I think one of the one of the things that I like to say when people get really stuck in this, well, uh, this mindset of we just need to run a Bible study in our living room, like you said, Jeff, right?
Mhm.
It's all sort of like stuck to the living room in a certain sort of structure. You know, we'll sit down and read and have a meal and that's it. Um, is how often did you find when you would run a Bible study with a group of people in a home that when half the group left at the end of the night, and people had to take off, get in their cars and leave, and a few people lingered around, and then you ended up hanging out for another hour or two, that's when
Yeah.
the real conversations happen. That's
Yep.
when they asked all sorts of crazy questions and you laughed and you
Mhm.
hung out and you bonded and you really got to know these people. I would venture to say that's when the real ministry happened,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
That's when you really started forming people's minds, hearts, lives, was in those
Mhm.
types of environment. It's like as soon as people could let loose and they lost
Mhm.
some of the structure and they started having fun together and the agenda was gone a little bit, that
Mhm.
it's like a playground for formation and
Yeah.
connection and friendship and all of that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I always joke with people at the end of our gatherings, with if it's at our house or someone else's house, usually we'll end up with the poker game at the dinner table. When I mention the dinner table, that's where we play our games as well. So poker or Monopoly or whatever. So people who stay late, we usually get out the Monopoly board game or poker chips, whatever. And then the other times was with my wife, because my wife is a true shepherder. She loves deep conversations with one or two girls at a time. And so usually we're playing poker at the dinner table. And then I look in the living room and my wife's at the couch, like crying or sobbing with someone or, two other girls. Yeah, so human connection, it happens in all sorts of ways, of course. But I think we really look around at your natural surroundings, like where do you spend every day? Where do you spend a lot of your time? I think Jesus is already there working with people, and he'll show you how to make those connections and have fun together.
Yeah. I love that because I think there's this weird idea that people have, Jeff, that if if you're gonna party or party for Jesus, you have to be an evangelist, right?
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
like only an evangelist gifting sort of
Mhm.
environment. But I actually find if we have several people that are a part of our micro church hanging out for a barbecue, what you just described, right? You see someone who's hurting, maybe a neighbor, friend, a coworker who is going through a rough divorce, and a person who's a part of your micro church who's not an evangelist. They're more of like a shepherd, but they're
Mhm.
sitting with this neighbor that's hurting like
Mhm.
all night and they're
Yeah.
bonding and they're talking about
Yeah.
what's happening and this
Yeah.
person's caring for them. And
Yep.
so it truly is like the environment. We need everybody
Yeah.
and everyone from various different
Mhm.
giftings. Like we're better when we team up, right?
Yeah, yeah. I want to reframe that for people so badly, because I grew up in a culture where if you're the evangelist, you're ready with the gospel tract in your back pocket, and that's that is not evangelistic. I'm just going to call it out right now. That's not evangelistic. You're actually looking to convert people, and the Bible never tells us to convert people. That tells us to actually bless people. And so instead of being the conversion guy or the conversion girl, you can actually be a better evangelist by creating natural bridges of connection and human connection at the poker table. So what I mean by that is, if you really care that someone hears the gospel and actually trusts Jesus and begins to follow Jesus, you're going to do whatever it takes to connect that one person or those two people to your other Jesus following brothers and sisters around the same table or around the same shared space. So how I do that is through a poker table or a Monopoly game, because if I have my one or two friends that are maybe don't know Jesus or haven't yet decided to follow Jesus or trusting Jesus, and I have my Mike Geralds and my Ron Spaldings and whoever that is at the poker table, I know that that's going to be a great connection, and they're going to hear the gospel so much more regularly in those relationships than they would if I just had my cheesy 4-law tract, if that makes sense.
Yeah, because you're not pushing an agenda. You're just not hiding who you are. It's like
Yeah.
you don't need to push something on someone. Just be around people and have a great time and be who you are in
Mhm.
Christ. And so if your mindset about the world is shaped by forgiving people and blessing your enemies, and you guys are having conversations about just regular difficult coworkers and stuff like that, your
Mhm.
mindset is shaped by Jesus, and that's going to come out in a
Mhm.
normal conversation with a group of people. So
Yep.
you're right. You don't need to drop some weird, awkward, sales
Script.
pitch script for spiritual
Mhm.
laws crap. You can just simply allow your wildly different perspective about
Mhm.
forgiving that person. Or what if you
Yeah.
just what if you sent Uber Eats to that person's house that really ticked you
Yeah.
off at work? I mean, those
Yeah.
are radical ideas
Yeah.
for people that are
Yeah.
processed.
Yeah, and for folks that are wanting a little more of Jesus in the conversation, let me give you an example of this, guys, in Luke 7. So there's a great story in Luke 7. I'm just going to pick it up where they start to question him in 33. They were questioning Jesus' methods and his tactics, of course, these Pharisaical leaders, and he replies in verse 33 of Luke 7. For John the Baptist came eating no bread, drinking no wine, and you say he has a demon. But the Son of Man comes eating and drinking, and you say, look at him, a glutton, a drunkard, a friend of tax collectors and sinners. Yet wisdom is justified by all her children. So they were blaming John the Baptist when he wasn't eating or drinking, and then they were blaming Jesus when he was eating and drinking wine. And so he has them caught. Like, well, which is, in your opinion, which is it going to be? And so the very next verse in Luke chapter 7 is great. So one of the Pharisees then asked Jesus to eat with him, and he went into the Pharisee's house and reclines at the table. So again, it's a party, right? It's a house party. And again, redefining party, right? But it's a house party with the Pharisee and his Pharisee buddies, more than likely. And verse 37, behold, a woman of the city who was a sinner, when she learned that he was reclining at the table in the Pharisee's home, brought an alabaster flask of ointment, and standing behind Jesus, started weeping and wetting his feet with her tears, and wiped with her hair of her head, kissed his feet, anointed his feet with her ointment. And when the Pharisees who invited him saw it, they said, if this guy was a prophet, he would know who she is and what this woman did, because she is a sinner. And Jesus answered, Simon, one of the Pharisees, I have something to say to you. And he answered, sir. And he goes on to the story about this forgiveness message about these two debtors. So without having to go through the whole chapter, it's a simple story. It's a house environment where they're having a dinner, having this dinner party, and in comes this woman who is a sinner and repents through her own tears and through her own alabaster jar, anointing Jesus's feet. And this is exactly the kind of party that Jesus defines for us. It's like you want a good redefinition of party. Here it is, Luke chapter 7, verse 36. Because number one, second-class citizens and outcasts were honored. So if you're ever going to have a party where Jesus is the center, I want to have the outcast, right? The second class, the refugee, the immigrant, or the internationals, or whoever it is in your city that people consider second class or outcasts. I want those people in my party, in my dinner party. And then number two, the religious folks will grumble. Okay, so that will always be part of your parties. If you have a real party where Jesus is honored, the religious people are going to get pissed off with you, and you will hear about it from your religious friends. And so Mike and I know Mike believes this, but we like counted it like a badge of honor when our religious friends get pissed off at us. We're like, we just kind of expect it because that's what should happen. And we love our religious friends because they need Jesus too. They need freedom in Jesus as well. And then number three, a good sign of a Jesus-centered party is that there's always this level of discipleship that deepens, or this allegiance to Jesus deepens. So there's always this like the woman who anointed his feet. She went from this level of kind of hearing about Jesus, knowing about Jesus, But then after that moment of worship and that interaction with Jesus, it kind of locked her in to being allegiant to Jesus. And so I love that discipleship is a natural byproduct of a good Jesus-centered party. Think about the poker party, right? When those people meet your awesome Jesus following friends and there's real connections made, their curiosity and their deepening of their hearts to ask questions about Jesus, it's just going to naturally go there. And those are the kinds of discussions that we want after the poker party, walking out to the trucks. Hey, by the way, we have this coffee time with these guys on Thursday mornings. I'd love to hear a story where we just pray for each other, talk about Jesus, continue to build each other up. So you should come to my little coffee group with Ted and Joe and the same guys you played poker with. And so those discipleship moments become deeper because of those parties as well. So I think those three hallmarks of parties, the outcasts, the second class citizens, whoever they are in your culture, they're always invited. And number two, religious people will get pissed off, and you should be thankful for that. It's a good thing. And then and then number three, our discipleship deepens. Those conversations deepen, those relationships deepen, and people truly become Jesus followers, not because of a cheesy tract, but because of those parties and those environments of fun.
Yeah, and when you talk about, the second class citizen, that sort of thing, it just makes me think about how when you actually get to know people that you previously ignored or didn't pay attention to, people in your community that are just sort of pushed aside, you come to find that they're actually some of the most incredible, interesting, engaging, like Jesus people that you've ever met.
Absolutely.
And your life was so robbed of their presence because you surrounded yourself with people that are just like you.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think part of the challenge is to start to see people that were previously invisible to you, to start to value not just some people, but every person as made in the image of God.
Yeah.
And your life is going to be spicier for it.
Yeah.
You're going to
Yeah.
have
Yeah.
a better time.
And
You really are.
I'll give you another real life example of this, and it's basically out of the life of Jesus as well. But in John chapter 2, Jesus and his disciples go to this wedding party. Remember that, Mike? And they're like hang out with just a bunch of people at this party. It's a wedding party, right? And so there's eating and drinking and dancing. And by the way, all of Jesus's parties are based off Sabbath meals and like Jewish festivals and feasts. And this is nothing new for Jesus and his Jewish disciples, right? These are all Jewish principles of having feasts and drinking and dancing, and even in the feast to come, our marriage feast with the Lamb of God, Jesus himself in Revelation is a picture of wine and choicest meats, and it's a party, it's a feast, right? So, but in John 2, Jesus shows us a little picture of this with this wedding party, and I love it because he goes there, he doesn't have the 4 laws in his back pocket, he doesn't have the gospel tract, and he doesn't like pause the party and do a sermon. He's there as a part of the party, and he brings the best wine. He turns these water jars filled with, they're empty because they run out of wine, right? And he takes these jars and he fills them with super, super good wine. So much so that the head of the party's like, what are you doing? People that drink a lot like the crappy wine last. So we could have served them with crappy wine, but you made them the best wine. And it just shows the heart of Jesus towards this couple that's getting married, their friends and their family, and this party environment that he loves to provide for. And so in my real life, I help couples marry them, and I give them premarital counseling, and I marry them. And the first thing I say that's out of my lips, and every young couple that I interview with, Mike, they hate the church, or I wouldn't say hate, but I would say 1 out of every 20 have no real connection with the church at all. But when I tell them about that story with Jesus bringing the best wine, I say, I just want to serve you guys like Jesus would, and I want to bring the best wine. I want to be known as the officiant that brings the best wine like Jesus did. And they smile and like, I've never heard that before. Oh my goodness, I love that. Is that really true about Jesus? Could you teach us more about that a little bit? Or could you like share that with the little sermonette that you do during the wedding? And but it's just representing this joy and this happiness and this this element of Jesus that we're missing, that he loves to have fun and celebrate things. And and be a part of the party and a part of the action. And I just think we really need to like train ourselves how to laugh and just dance, and just join the dances. Don't, if the guy's having the old fashioned or whatever drink he has in his hand and he pours you one, drink it with joy, and then have great conversation and just be a part of the party. That's my message.
Yeah, Jeff, we actually have one of our micro churches formed around dance parties.
Nice.
It's called Let's Dance. And so they teamed up with a couple businesses in the area that are funding the DJ and the facility rental. And then people are coming and they're contributing money, and all of the money goes out to meet needs of people in the community. And so they have these dance parties to connect with people. They're turning around and meeting needs. They're partnering with local businesses, and then that's turned into people coming to faith and being formed. But it started with, let's do something that's really fun. Let's dance together. Let's have a good time. And you and I have talked about this. When we talk about fun, there's this fear of, what if people misbehave? What if things go wrong? I think we could do a whole webinar on alcohol and mission, because some of our micro churches have formed as beer churches that are reaching people over a pint. And some
Yeah.
of our micro churches are dry because we have a lot of people recovering from addiction, right?
Mhm.
And so you start with this mindset of, what does it look like to connect with these people, have fun with these people, be good news to these people?
Mhm.
And when you start with that, there are all sorts of crazy ideas that
Yeah, yeah,
you come
yeah.
up with.
Yeah, it's not about alcohol, or it's not about dancing, or it's not about playing cards, right? Because we grew up in cultures, my parents, grandparents, generations, like some, you can't even play a game of, poker because cards are evil, right? So you can't make it a selection of individual items, but you look at your culture and you say, how are people having fun here? And how would Jesus have fun with them? And keep it Jesus centered. That's a good challenging question, and taking the posture of a missionary, I think, is a good phrase for folks to write down or mentally kind of grab onto. If I thought like a missionary in my neighborhood, in my city, in my culture, where are people having fun? Here's my challenge: don't create a party on your own, but join a party that's happening in your neighborhood or in your
Mhm.
city. Don't create another Christian thing to do or to invite people to before you actually join another person's party. Kind of like the wedding feast in John 2. So how you do that, you go on your city's website and you find out where are the, I know COVID has kind of, put the kibosh on a lot of parties, but there are still gatherings happening. There are things happening in your city. So find those things. One of the things, when I went to Lake Havasu, they were having a classic car parade, and we just went inside the parade and we sat down. We started talking. Guys had their hoods open, and people are walking around asking them questions about their cars. And so my son and I were just walking around asking them questions, or how long did it take you to rebuild this? Where are you from? Oh, you're from Minnesota. I'm from Minnesota. Or you're from Wisconsin. I feel sorry for you. I'm from Minnesota. Um, but you know what I mean? You join those classic car parades and you have 15 conversations in less than a half an hour. How could you do that by creating your own party right off the bat, right? So I think if we're creatively looking at our city and our culture and finding out where they actually party, I know Alan Hirsch talks about this a lot. Like, look at your city and not where's the pain? Yes, where are the pennies? Where's the power? But one of those P's is parties. Where are the parties at? And you get to know a lot about your culture by just looking at the parties.
Well, and you're hitting it, man. And in this season, it can be a little challenging with large group gatherings out in places. But if you get creative with it, we had a girl 2 weeks ago that started gathering a group of people to take walks. People were bringing their dogs and strollers with kids and just taking walks together at the park. She was shocked at how many friends, neighbors, coworkers showed up. This crowd of
Yeah.
people walking in, two little cliques of two or three, taking a walk, and she's praying for all of them, but starting to form a micro church just around walking at the park every Saturday, right?
Yes.
Real,
Yes.
really super simple kind of
Simple.
stuff. Yeah,
Yep.
I mean,
It's
like
perfect.
last year during quarantine, people were so hungry and starved for connection that we found people just wanted to come over for like to swim at our house.
Yes,
So we got a swimming pool in our backyard. And so play dates and swimming pool, people were hanging out all
absolutely.
summer, just small, very small
Mhm.
groups of us. And it's
Yeah.
funny because after you're doing a couple cannonballs and hanging out on the back patio, like suddenly I'm sitting out there with my buddy Mark and his girlfriend Holly, and then she
Yeah.
starts asking these questions about do you believe in ghosts? And what do you think about this? And then the whole like
Yeah.
spiritual realm
Right.
conversation came up, and
Yep.
we talked until 1 o'clock in the morning. I had to
Yeah.
sort of like
Yeah.
nudge them out because I was exhausted. They were there from like 4 in the afternoon
Yeah.
until 1 a.m. And
Right.
those
Right.
environments are just a blast. And people walk
Yeah.
away going, remember that conversation we had?
Yeah.
It's so rich.
Yeah. Fine. I would challenge people with that, Mike, too. Like that is such a great example because it doesn't take a lot to think of something fun to do. Like you can just like Google how to have fun if you need to, if you can't come up with ideas. But but think of something, and some people need to do that, honestly. Some Christians, some people that are just so caught up in religion, they just need to like find one thing fun to do. And then number two, I'll make it really simple. Find someone that can do that better than you. So find something fun that interests you, and then call someone or text someone or message someone that can do it better than you, and ask them to kind of teach you or help you. Like my buddy Mitch, metal detecting in the Arizona desert. He knew everything about metal detecting, and I'm just like, could you take my son and I out for an hour or two? And we were out for 5 hours together, and he loved it. Mitch loved it. He loved teaching us what he knew and showing us things, and it was a blast. And it was from that conversation that we had those drinks at the bunker bar afterwards and just get to know his story. And so much so that he wanted us to come back and bring his other buddies and join us. And so find something that you love to do, or you want, maybe something you want to learn to do. Find something that can do it better than you in your area, and make a connection. You can obviously handle COVID appropriate, practices with anyone, if you're creative enough to do that. So yeah, it's so simple, but we have to be willing to make, again, I'll go back to the first thing we said. People don't move spiritually until they're connected socially. It's like we're not going to help people take spiritual steps towards Jesus if we can't have some kind of a friendship or social connection with them, to begin with. And so be
Yeah,
that bridge.
Jeff, people are probably not gonna have much effectiveness in building relationships with people on mission if they're not having fun.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and
Why
so
would
you
I
have
want to
to you
agree
have
with you?
to
Yeah.
yeah, you have to think about like people ask like, okay, I'm trying to figure out like I want to start something on mission. I believe in a great commission. I want to reach people. Say things like that. And they're like, where do I start? And Jeff, I look at him and I'm like, what do you like to do? Maybe
Yeah.
you should start there. What's a hobby
Yeah.
that you have? What's something that you enjoy? Well, I
Yeah.
love watching UFC. Cool. You have some friends that like watching UFC? Sweet. Maybe you guys need to watch UFC together. That's a
Yeah.
great starting point. It sounds really
Right.
simple. But if you
Yeah.
start gathering with some people watching UFC, you bond, you connect, you eat, you laugh, you talk
Mhm.
back and forth. It's a natural thing. So if you start
Yeah.
with something you enjoy, or even something that you feel passionate about, something that frustrates you. Other people are
Mhm.
going, I want to do something about human trafficking or something, right? So they're going to start or form something around that. So if you think about
Mhm.
what do you love doing, what's fun, or what do you have a
Mhm.
passion for, those are great starting points for
Mhm.
mission.
Yeah.
What's
Yeah.
fun, or what do you have passion for? And people
Yeah.
miss it if they just start with this weird sense of duty to reach the
Mhm.
world, but they don't have passion behind it. They have no fun in it. And then it
Mhm.
just feels like they're trudging along, like trying to make something happen.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, and I think the one of the last pieces here of the picture, if you go back to Jesus, obviously he models this all over the place. He's taking hikes, fishing trips, traveling with his disciples, going to places. Obviously, all the miracles and all his ministry is kind of the gravy on the mashed potatoes. But it starts off with an invitational relationship to come follow me, right? And I'll make you fishers of men. So he's alluding to the fishing, and obviously they fish together, and there's this doing piece of discipleship. This, we're going to go on a journey together, and we're going to have fun together, and fun's going to be a part of that. And then you get in these house parties, and the Zacchaeus moment when he goes to Zacchaeus's house, and we already talked about the Pharisees' house. And so we're gonna have fun, we're gonna move, we're gonna travel, we're gonna fish, we're gonna hike, we're gonna go on a boat, we're gonna get some rest, we're gonna party. All these things combined just make Jesus into the super, super fun person to be with. And holiness in our culture, holiness, when you think about holiness, it got redefined. I don't know by who, but it got kind of bastardized by this idea of we have to be holy and separate ourselves away from people or away from culture. And instead of, I look at Jesus's holiness and how holy Jesus was. His holiness was, I'm going to be so holy that my holiness sets me apart for my culture, not from my culture. And so I don't know who redefined it for us, but it sucks. Holiness became, I want to be so holy that I'm removed from my culture, or I'm going to pull myself away from my culture, instead of the version of Jesus's holiness. And what he wants to do in my life, I think, is I want to make you so holy, so like me, so set apart for my mission, that I want to set apart you for your culture, or so that you stay in the middle of your culture. And Jesus models this. He stays in the culture, in the cultural moment, and he models what it's like to be close to God while you're fishing, while you're partying, while you're at a house party, while you're hiking, while you're moving and doing life together. And so I think we
Well,
really got to work
that's the
hard at
scripture,
reclaiming.
right? Whether you eat or drink or whatever you do, whether you
Yeah,
eat or drink or fish or hike or whatever you do, whether you take your metal detector, whatever you do, right, Jeff?
yeah,
Like that's
yeah.
it.
It's so key. And I love the culmination of it is it's in the Lord's Supper. Is this is not just a token trinket, like a little plastic cup, or it's not a little wafer, but it's a chunk of bread that he rips off for us. So if you look at the text, he actually tears the bread, and here's a chunk of bread, John. Here's a chunk of bread, Matthew. That kind of, and then here's a big old tank of wine, and we're gonna drink this together. And it's a full meal. The word in the Greek is daipon. I just looked it up in my little. This is a great book, by the way, Paul's Idea of Community by Robert Banks. It's such a great book on community and how to build true community in Paul's letters as well. But it was a full meal experience. It was again based off the Jewish feast. It was a party, and I think we made it trinkets. We take these amazing truths and we make them trinkets, instead of enjoying the full meal that the Lord's Supper is. So the Lord's Supper becomes the party. I would call it a dinner party before I would call it anything else. It's a true dinner party. So the dinner party, the Lord's Supper, became the central focus of the New Testament church, all through the book of Acts, all through Paul's letters and Paul's churches, all into the early church, the first 300 years of the church before it got, kind of taken over by Constantine. Were these house gatherings and these local fellowships, even in like businesses like Aquila and Priscilla, they had their storefront, their business, and other places like that. Public places like Mars Hill, where Paul preached, all these public places. And at the center of that were these meals, these dinner parties to honor Jesus. And they would drink wine, real wine, and they would eat a chunk of bread, and they would remember the gospel, and they'd look forward to when Jesus would drink it again in the new kingdom, in the wedding of the Lamb, which is going to be the ultimate party, the wedding of the Lamb in Revelation 19, I believe it is, the ultimate feast, the ultimate party. Is going to be all kinds of choice meats and really good wine, and just this nonstop celebration presence of Jesus, being in the full presence of Jesus, full of joy, full of life as a party. So the Lord's Supper, if we can recapture this party element and the dinner party as the center of our churches, in our homes every day, celebrating through our meals, I think we can get there, and start to kind of loosen the religiosity of what we do.
The table is a great equalizer. You sit around the table and people can sort of open up and talk about things. And
Yeah,
the husband's telling a story and the wife's like, that's not quite how it went, right?
yeah,
And
yeah,
suddenly people are humbled and the real truth comes out and you're laughing
yeah,
and teasing each other and elbowing
yeah.
each other. And there's something really beautiful about it. I'm going to give you guys a tip that I gave Chelsea not too long ago. Chelsea, I don't know if you'll remember this, but one of the things that that I like to keep in my mind is when it comes to mission, you want to meet people where they're at. And so go to their parties, right? Like go to where they're fishing, go to the hillside where the people are hanging out and accommodate them, meet them where they're at. Go to the people, right? It's part of being the sent people of
Mhm.
God. Jeff said it. See where things are already happening. Look in your city for the events that are already happening. Like crash the weddings, right? Go to the
Yeah,
parties that are
exactly.
already happening and
If you,
and
hey, by the way, if you bring the best wine, they will let you in.
so go to these places and meet people where they're at. But then I think when it comes to the people that we are wanting to form them up in their faith and we see them as like a part of what we're doing, I think we need to think of ourselves not as accommodating them but stretching them and being unpredictable and taking them places that they wouldn't normally go, taking them into new environments, saying, hey, let's go climb up this mountain together. Or let's go serve these people here tonight. And so you're stretching those people, but you're accommodating people that you're trying to connect with for the first time. The people that are on the journey with, you're stretching them, new experiences. You want to be unpredictable. I think it's a crime that people show up and they know what's going to happen.
Mhm.
It's too
Yeah.
boring. It's too
Yeah.
boring, right? You've
Mhm.
got to think about what are some experiences, what are some places, what are some things that we could do that would really stretch people and create adventure and move them outside of their element and help them think about something in an entirely new and fresh way. And
Mhm.
we get to be creative people because we're
Yeah.
made in the image of the creator.
Yeah. And by the way, you can do this too with your living room gatherings. I know we kind of harped on just the living room experience, but if you are gathering in a home and you want meaningful content around the scriptures, instead of having the schedule where the first 10 minutes is teaching, the second 15 minutes is prayer, the next 10 minutes, instead of having like just being so locked and girded like that, we just allow the Holy Spirit to lead, and we expect people to bring something to nourish. So we like this, like the Lord's Supper is the meal, the physical meal, like when we're eating a dinner and we're practicing the Lord's Supper together. That's our physical meal. So we expect people to share or to bring something to share for the physical meal. We also tell people bring something for the spiritual meal as well. Like bring something that really caught your mind's attention while you're reading scripture this week, or as you were praying or prophesying or hearing from the Lord this week, what really caught your attention that you could bring to our group gathering for others to be benefited by. As you were out about just doing ministry with your friends in the gym or the coffee shops or the ball games, what did you see? What opportunities did you have to bless others? We want to hear about those as well. So come with something spiritually that will feed us, that we can celebrate in. And so if you make it that free and that spirit led and that open, every week is unpredictable when you actually do your gatherings. And you don't have to have the 10 minutes, 20 minutes, 10 minutes kind of thing. So you can keep things like a party, and even in those gatherings, if you expect everyone to bring something to share.
One of my favorite ones, Jeff, is one of our micro churches said, because they saw themselves as missionaries to the Renaissance Fair. And so they said that they were going to gather their friends together. And I said, what are you guys going to do? They're like, we are going to have an ice cream, Dungeons and Dragons, and conversation about spirits, demons, angels, and the Holy Spirit. And I'm like, that sounds awesome. So they invited all these friends that they connected with at the Renaissance Fair that are totally into talking about the supernatural. And they ate ice cream, played Dungeons and Dragons, and talked about spirits and demons and angels and just met them where they're at. And it can be fun, right? And lively discussion happens.
Mhm.
And then they're asking like, how do I process this stuff with people? And they had these questions and I couldn't answer them. And then it's an opportunity for me to help them in their formation. It's a blast.
Yes. Oh,
Yeah,
there's
it doesn't
nothing
have to
greater
be
than that.
stale.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. And the more quote unquote second class citizens, like, I don't want to use the term because I don't believe there's any obviously second class citizen, but if you look at Jesus's parties, there's always the people that were looked down on, right? And so if you have those people as part of your parties, and if you're really looking after those people that are always looked down on, and you invite them to be part of the conversation and actually to lead the discussion, like in my community, there's a lot of refugee immigrant neighbors from different countries. And we just ask them to share, like, what's on your mind? Like, what questions do you have about our culture? What are some frustrations you're feeling? And we have long hour, 2 hour long conversations when we just let them open up and share. And we can pray for them, we can minister to them, we can serve them, we can bond together and work on things together. But if you don't let people have those open, honest conversations and discussions, we're never going to have true Jesus-centered parties. We're always going to be the ones that want to talk, or the ones that need to teach, because I'm a teacher, I need to teach. We need to like humble ourselves and open up the floor to for other people to share in these parties. And I think the best times are, like you said, the non-scripted ones, when we're around the poker table, or at the bonfire, or we're at the grocery store buying groceries together. Those are some of the best non-scripted things that come out of these relationships.
And hey, if we're communities of grace, not communities of performance, right? If we're the most free people in the world because we have Jesus and he set us free and declared us righteous, and all the weight's off, and all the performance that people live by all the time to try to prove themselves and prove their value and cause people to like them or love them or affirm them. If we're free, right? We just get to have fun with people and
Mhm.
share good news with them and create environments where people are having a blast and starting to engage in spiritual dialogue and serve other people together. And
Mhm.
it's a blast. We can sort of like grab a bag of seed and just liberally toss it all over the yard, right?
Mhm. Yeah, I
and
love that.
then whatever the spirit wants to do with that is cool, because at the end
Mhm.
of the day, we're not attaching ourselves
Yeah,
to
yeah,
having to sit there and obsess over the seed and dump water
yeah,
over it all night and
right.
leave a bunch of spotlights on it and freak out about what's going to happen with people. We can just sort of toss the stuff out, have fun,
Yeah,
and go to
yeah,
sleep and trust the spirit to do what the spirit does and have a
yeah,
good time on the journey, right? And enjoy
absolutely.
it. Cast the net
Yeah.
wider. Invite
The best,
different people that you've never
yeah,
connected with before.
the best examples of that, Mike, that I've ever been a part of are when we choose, like, someone gets a new job, or someone gets engaged, or someone, gets into that school program they wanted to get into. And then someone hears about it and they're like, we need to go and celebrate. We need to go and party because that's awesome. You just got engaged. Oh my goodness. You just got that job, or you just had this, family. Maybe someone went through a hard like season, and now God provided some kind of relief or healing or whatever. We need to go celebrate that. And so we'll meet at the pub, or we'll meet at the house, or we'll meet somewhere. And so you're looking for ways to celebrate. You're looking for things to celebrate. And when you create that culture, so whoever's listening, if you can create a culture of celebration, even the small things, like the new job, or the new college program, or the birth of a new child, or even a birthday. Like, how many times could we just say, it's your birthday, where are we going to party? So look for ways to party, look for ways to celebrate, because they're all around us. It's just we've kind of lost that value in our culture because we're just so used to not celebrating and not truly having fun. So look for
I,
those ways.
Jeff, I got a great story today. Today, I got a phone call that my nephew is a dad today, and he didn't even know that his girlfriend was pregnant.
There you go.
so
Time to party.
so last night she went in because she thought there was like something wrong, like an appendix or something. Went in and they did an ultrasound and said, you got a 7-pound baby in there.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's amazing.
And so
That's a
she gave
Zacchaeus.
birth.
That's a Zacchaeus moment. It's like, tonight. What's his name? What's the guy's name?
Yeah, you're gonna be with me tonight.
Yeah,
Are
what's
you?
what's the guy's name? Your cousin or whoever it is.
Yeah, Dylan. Yeah.
Dylan. So you say,
Yep.
tonight, Dylan, I'm coming to your house. We're gonna celebrate.
I
That's a Zacchaeus moment.
well, I called him up and he's like terrified. He's like, I missed the whole thing because her mom took her to the hospital to check out her appendix or whatever, and then he gets a call that she's birthing his child.
Yeah. I love that. I
and
love that.
and and we put the word out to our micro church, like, we need baby supplies, and all these people are like, I got diapers, I got this,
That's
I got
awesome.
that. So we're
That's
gonna
awesome.
go like dump all these supplies on them and
Yeah.
surround them and love them, right? But it's
Yes.
just
Perfect.
one of
Perfect.
those crazy stories.
Because they would probably be expecting fear or judgment from other Jesus followers, right? Or like, how dare you do that? That's not the right order of things, whatever. But you can celebrate that new life and celebrate the fact that he wants to be a daddy and she wants to be a good mommy, and celebrate their relationship and help that grow and flourish. And a lot to celebrate there. But instead, people know Christians as the reverse, the finger waggers, right? Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, I'm going to stop the recording and the rest of us can wrap for a couple minutes here.
Yeah, that
So
sounds
if
good.
you're watching us online, peace.